Hit the ground running with the most revolutionary personal training program ever developed. The National Academy of Sports Medicine, the #1 choice for fitness professionals, makes it quick, easy, and affordable to learn on the go. Be your own boss and start transforming lives from 9 to 99 with the all-new certified personal training program only at NASM.org.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Random Fit, powered by the National Academy of Sports Medicine. My name is Wendy Batts, and I am here with my fellow colleague, Mr. Ken Miller. How are you today?
I'm great, Wendy. How are you?
Oh, I'm so good, and I am extremely excited about this podcast. Today, everyone, we are talking about dodgeball. And, there's so many different people that have talked about dodgeball actually recently. So when we said we were going to do this episode, it just seems like it's popping up everywhere. And I know for myself personally, I am a huge SEC football fan. And I have a particular team that I absolutely love that has been in the rebuilding phase probably for the last 20 years. And I actually read on social media that when we got a new head coach, that one of the games that they decided to do for basically team building was the sport of dodgeball. And I was like, this is the best thing ever. And so I know, Ken, you are actually excited about this as well, but I'm going to ask you one question. Uh-oh. And my first question that I have for you is, when I say dodgeball, what comes to mind?
The 5 Ds, of course. Dodge, dip, dive, duck, and dodge. I mean, it's hard to believe that dodgeball. What's the full title?
It is Dodgeball, a True Underdog.
True Underdog Story, and that it was. But it's hard to believe that movie. First of all, it's hard to believe you can make a movie and it be so entertaining about dodgeball. But the fact that it's 2004 that movie came out. And for those of you that haven't seen it, go out and see it. I mean, it's out there. They'll show it on TNT, AMC, any one of those on a Saturday, in between, Star Wars weekends. But but the movie itself, again, with that movie, if you haven't watched it, big spoiler alert, the underdogs win. But for the most part, you have this David versus Goliath. You have the average Joe's, which is your small, health club, local gym, where basically it's kind of like the Cheers of health clubs, right? Because everybody knows your name. And they've got the owner, Vince Vaughn, who knows pretty much every member in the gym. So he's got a real personal take to it. And then you have Globo Gym, where you have this big, huge box gym, and it's about physique. It's how you look, and it's about being as shredded and wearing I think every guy in there had a tank top pretty much, or something along the lines of a schmedium. But now you have, is it Ben Stiller? Yes. Who now he's the owner of this big multi gym chain, big box facility. And it is about, how you look and being shredded, and but it's about that big corporate gym feel. And then you have these two that just going at it. And of course, the average Joe gym is up for, behind in their debt, and they enter a dodgeball tournament, and, there ensues the fun and the laughter. So, and somehow they work in the sport of dodgeball, which, when we talk about, first of all, the gyms back there in 2004, I mean, just to pit, the local health club versus a big box gym, definitely they go into contrasting, everything that we might in the fitness industry see as, the difference between, local homegrown, small business health club versus, what could be seen as, an impersonal revenue biased, just something more superficial when it comes to health clubs. So, it's funny watching that movie last week compared to, 16 years ago. I mean, it has a totally different context to me when it came to watching that. I know, Wendy, what were some of your thoughts when it came to, we're here talking about dodgeball, straight balling, the sport of dodgeball. So me, Ken Miller, and Miss Wendy Batts over here, just talking about dodgeball, the sport, but, to have this movie, kind of bringing it to light 15, 16 years ago. I mean, what was it like for you to kind of watch this movie as part of the research?
Well, and I found it very interesting because, the first time I just went in just to watch the movie, and, I've been training. I mean, so it wasn't something like I changed careers and I had never been a personal trainer, but I did kind of look at it now as I've grown in the industry and, now going out and teaching. I found it very fascinating that when, Average Joe, so the owner, Peter LaFleur, if you will, would go and he would talk to his members. I was like, you know what? I was that trainer. I knew everyone in the place that I was training. It was a smaller gym. They did have more updated equipment where I worked versus what they had. But I found it interesting that it wasn't about personal training. It was about people going in and having a community, having kind of the place to go in order to kind of get out of their mind and out of their everyday and be with people that were supportive. And so I thought that was interesting because I could relate a lot to that. However, being, traveling and going in and working in different atmospheres and being in big box gyms and also working a little bit in big box gyms, I could also see that the push, as well as, you need to hit a certain revenue, like you have a certain look and feel to the facility that sometimes wasn't quite as personal because, you look at, the smoothie bars and some people have cafeterias and they've got, different components to this gym. And in comparison, I found that very, very interesting. But, I also found it interesting, another spoiler alert, the reason that they were in debt, meaning Average Joe's in comparison to Globo Gym, is I'm sure they were on a reoccurring monthly, dues in Globo Gym because they had up-to-date technology. In comparison to these other individuals that were coming to this gym, they hadn't collected dues for months, and that's a reason why that this poor guy was going to lose his place. So I don't know. It's very entertaining. You've got to go in knowing that the characters, they all play a specific role. There was one kid that's in there that was trying to build size because he had a crush on a cheerleader and he wanted to become a male cheerleader, and he got all tangled up in like a machine trying to do a chest press, and Vince Vaughn had to go and try to help him out of it. So there is a lot of, fun pieces to the movie. But it brings us to this podcast, and, when you think about all of it, we got to look at the history of dodgeball. And I know, I've done research. Ken, you did research. Why don't you give us a little bit about how did dodgeball even come to the United States? Where did it start? And which is kind of freaky when you think about it. And it's not a very positive, when we read about it, there wasn't a lot of positivity to the fact of how it came to the States. But why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, and I know you read the same, some of the same historical backings when it came to the sport of dodgeball. It's actually really interesting because I know, when I think about dodgeball, I think about when I was in fourth grade, right? But to go now into the history and how it came about, it was actually really violent. And from the standpoint, it started from where it was first discovered back in 1800s by a missionary called by the name of Dr. James Carlisle, going on a mission into Africa. he was observing a game, well, what that eventually came to be known as dodgeball. But what he was observing was two tribes, and basically they would have their tribes, which, as we would call it, teams, and they would basically throw rocks at each other and trying to just, first of all, trying to down one of the other tribesmen. And once one of the tribesmen went down, now what they were trying to do is essentially trying to off him, trying to just end him,
Take him out.
Take him out. They're done. Just, but that tribe, then, if one of your fellow tribesmen went down, then they were, as a team, trying to fend off these other tribes people as they were trying to kill their own player, tribesman, if you will. So in essence, they had to, it was a combination of things, of throwing rocks, with whatever size they were using. But what Dr. Carlisle was especially impressed with was the amount of agility that they had, the maneuverability to, I guess, duck, dive, dip, and dodge, to, trying to maneuver around, trying to throw their stones as well as trying to defend their own tribesmen. So from that vantage point, he wound up bringing that concept, not the idea of throwing rocks, but he went back to London by way of Europe, and he brought it back to university over there, and trying to introduce the idea. But instead of using rocks, they started using heavier, more I guess more subtle and usable leather balls, right? And then eventually it made its way to the US, and by a fellow by the name of Philip Ferguson. What he did was he brought it to university here in the United States, and at St. Mary's College, and there they introduced, of course, different implements. Again, something along the lines of a ball, to where you would form teams, and at that point in time, it was St. Mary's versus Yale. So you can look at the history back in the 1800s or the early 1800s, where they were actually competing with the concept of two teams pitted together, and you're trying to hit the other team with the ball, but essentially once they were hit, they were done. But back then, as opposed to when we would play this in elementary and junior high, well, more elementary than anything else, was that it was in an open field. So if you can imagine what we used to do in elementary school, instead of having, let's say a modified volleyball court, they're in an open field. You know how much running that would be? These guys had to be in shape back then. But again, going back to, you take this concept of watching this violent event, and looking at it for what it offered as far as maneuverability, sprinting, throwing, and duck, dive, all the 5Ds, and then taking that attribute and translating that into sport. And that was one of the more amazing things to me, is how they saw that event as something that can be used from a competitive standpoint, versus what was pretty violent, can be seen as pretty violent in our day.
You made some great points in Ferguson. What I found interesting, and like you said it early, when we're saying 1800s, guys, this is like 1884 is when he brought it to the States, and being able to convert it to make it a sport. His whole idea around that, like you mentioned, was basically to make it fast paced and more challenging, and to teach people to do the 5Ds, and being able to, have fun with it, and really, working together as a team. And, I know myself, when we start now, we've got some of the history, when we're thinking about history, again, I'm Wendy Batts, this is Ken Miller. We're talking about dodgeball, straight balling, if you will. Personally, I was trying to think about when we did dodgeball, because I did it in school for fun, and it was offered in school, and it was probably between third and fifth grade. And I don't know, Ken, when it was for you, but it wasn't thought of as like this, let me decapitate you and try to kill you type game. It literally was like, let's have fun. Let's try to, get the other team to lose, and let's teach you hand-eye coordination. Let's teach you how to throw a ball. Let's get some cardio in there and have fun laughing with your peers. So it's crazy where it started. And then kind of for me personally, doing it. I mean, I don't know if you had the same experience, but I had a ball.
Yeah, it was fun. And you said third to fifth grade. My memory took me straight to fourth grade
there you go.
in Mr. Benham's class. And we would, all go out there, and we had our spot, and we used actually what we called a cherry ball. It's just a basic rubber bouncy ball, which we pretty much use for everything, right? Handball, foursquare, dodgeball, kickball. Mm-hmm. That's where, man, I'm going way back now when I think about all that. You're taking me back, man. But we would all, and it, of course, just like everything else, you got to pick teams. Everything else that comes with, splitting up your classroom. But you always had that one guy that had the cannon for an arm. So that one guy who, whenever he got the ball, you're like, just go to the farthest corner of the court, because this guy's got a cannon, and nobody's safe when this guy has. I remember that guy for us was Scott Billings. He was, man, he had, I haven't said that name in years, but great guy. But he had one of those arms that was just, he had it. This guy's going to go pro. When you're in fourth grade, this guy's going to go pro. He can nail anybody with that ball. But you had to, everything that you talked about, when you got to stop, change direction, fake him out. And if you couldn't do any of that, then you actually had to have the coordination to catch this ball. I think that was one of the rules to dodgeball, right? If you can catch the ball, you can actually, the person who threw the ball was basically out of the game. But again, I had to think about this for a little bit. And when it came to that, to playing, that was one of the most fun parts of the day. When it's okay, recess. All right, grab a ball. All right, let's grab 4 or 5 of them, and let's get out there. So
well, and what's interesting is I have my husband and I both are trainers, and so we do some in-home training as well. And there's a client that actually came to our house last week, and I'm like, oh, so excited to tell him about our podcast that was coming up. And he was like, I can remember specifically how we played it. So I'm like, okay, lay it on me, because I remember playing, but I didn't remember like the rules of the game and how it started. Mm-hmm. And he was saying, basically with his, and of course this brought back a ton of memories for myself, but you start, at the line, right? So there's a line in the middle of the gym, and the coach would call black line. And so when they did that, that meant that you could go pick up the balls and throw the balls at each other, the other team, from behind the black line, which was basically a third of the way from the gym walls. So, you got to remember, your gyms aren't gigantic. Like you said, it's not this big open field. And we were using the kick size balls, and he was saying they used the same ones, like you said, for multiple sports. And then the actual, PE teacher or coach would then start to throw in these smaller red size balls, and he would just randomly throw those in, which everybody wanted to throw that one because you could throw it harder. You had quicker aim. So it was so fun to see him light up talking about this kind of stuff. And I know, to me, I get so, like, I don't know, I'm such a cheese ball, but I love it because, it was such a good memory for me. And I don't think anyone had a really hard time, like playing the sport, because it was kind of all inclusive. And we made sure, being that young, you were competitive, but it wasn't like when you're my age now, I'm super competitive and I am doing what it takes to win. But when you're thinking about that, and we're thinking about where we were, Ken, and you were saying you were in fourth grade, I can give the range third to fifth. Yeah. Now they've completely banned it in schools. Like, you can't, in 1991, they banned dodgeballs. Wait, no, I think it was 1999 is when they banned it, if I'm not mistaken. And and it makes sense because, they were saying, I think Austin and Independent School District in Texas, they were the first one to ban it. And, they were just basically saying that it was too rough, it was too dangerous, and they just banned it altogether. And there was multiple schools after that said it's no longer allowed in schools, which I understand to an extent, but I don't know. That one was hard.
Are you petitioning for them to bring dodgeball back? Is that
I mean, I don't know. Let's use like soft puffy balls if it's that. I mean, when we think of where it came from in the 1800s, yes, throwing rocks, trying to literally knock someone's head off. When they say don't throw stones at people, I'm sure that was a lot of where this dodgeball thing came from as well. If you kind of think about what people mean by saying that. But I don't know. I mean, they've taken so much activity out of schools, which and then you're looking at obesity rates going up, and there's not a lot of team sports that I see happening unless you do extra activities outside of schools, which unfortunately some people can't afford, or they don't have time for because they have to work.
Yeah, exactly. And unfortunately, with budget issues and, before the shutdown, I was presenting at a conference for basically physical education and health teachers here in California. And one of the first things to get cut, unfortunately, again, is usually, physical fitness related, or even now you start to get into the arts, as far as where, what's the first thing on the chopping block. And unfortunately, as we're both saying here, is that, PE, doesn't get a whole lot of funding. And if anything, as far as the school schedule goes, it gets cut. So yeah, with PE as it is, and then you take away a sport like dodgeball, and again, getting back to the activity or what you have to be able to do to be, I would say, successful at that sport. I say that like there's a professional league, but there's a lot of avenues to play dodgeball. But as we're developing, and again, I have a fourth and a second grader, and they're definitely in the developmental stage of their childhood. And when you think about the different sports you might play, again, everything is now based on organized sports, right? You have to go through a swim club or baseball, little league or softball or soccer. Something has to be organized, and it's usually outside of school. But when you think about dodgeball and what Dr. Carlisle saw in it, as far as your ability to move, your agility, your throwing things, accuracy, and whether it's you're the one throwing the ball or the one that has to defend against that ball. Dodgeball is one of those, as you really think about how many sports are there that actually challenge the multitude of skills that you're performing when you're actually playing, right? So I throw the ball, automatically I'm on the defense, right? Mm-hmm. You catch the ball, automatically you're on the offense. So there's a lot of, I guess, sports IQ that goes into it. But when you really think, man, it makes me want to just go get my kids and start to, just round up a bunch of fourth and third graders and give them a cherry ball and start throwing at each other. But I mean, it's like with tag, right? Tag, you have to run and chase, and you have to react to your opponent or to the other person playing. But with dodgeball, it's you have to react and you have to be the aggressor and the defender at this, within seconds of each other. So when I think about sports, dodgeball is one of those. That's the catch-all sport, right? And minimal equipment. Very rarely do you have. I mean, I don't know. Can you think of anything like that to where you have you have that much physical demand on you, as far as
Well, I mean, I mean, you're not touching anyone, that's another thing, you have your team. And so there's no contact, if you will, other than the ball. And you're trying not to let the ball hit you. And if you catch it, you bring in another player. So you're trying to keep growing your team as other people are getting out. So it's very fast paced. I was looking up, like, what are the rules and regulations of dodgeball? And I think they go for 10 minutes. Up to like 4 quarters, which I was like, man, that's 40 minutes up, possibly. Now, granted, you could be out in 5 seconds, like if you're not very good and everyone hits you, you can't catch and whatever. But, and if you guys do watch dodgeball, again, you've got to go into it very lighthearted, because there are some weird things. There's a person that brought in an old movie reel because they didn't know how to play dodgeball. And so they had this guy, Patches, who ended up, like telling all about, and that's when we say the 5 Ds. His 5 rules was, he would be like, you're going to dodge, you're going to duck, you're going to die, or was it dip and then dive? And then he couldn't remember the other one. So he's like, and dodge. So that's the 5 Ds. So when you're thinking of that, and you're watching this and you're trying to learn the game, and then all of a sudden, Patches has gotten older. So he comes in a wheelchair, and he was like, I'm going to be your coach because I want to see you guys succeed. He starts throwing wrenches at these guys. and in all reality, you throw a wrench at someone's head, it's going to be cut open. They're going to be passed out. Like, it's not going to go well. So when you watch the movie, just go into it knowing that this is supposed to be funny. I mean, parts of it's kind of weird. But to your point, it's really good activity. And I understand why they took it out of schools. I do, because I know that there's, we're trying to decrease violence and everything. So I'm definitely not saying that we need to bring it into schools for that reason. But on a like you said, coordination, learning, changing directions and stuff as a trainer, when you break up all the positives that it can do to really help young people grow into different sports and the carryover. We always talk about, if you do multiple sports, you're going to be really good at one sport because you've had so many different, different ways of learning things and different techniques. Plus you don't do the repetitive motion, which can lead to injury and stuff. So again, I'm just looking at it in a cheese ball way. I just think it seems like it's so fun. And, I don't know.
Well, so here we are talking about dodgeball, straight balling with Ken Miller and Miss Wendy Batts. And, when it comes to it's, again, it not being one of those commonplace sports that we see in school, it's still out there, right? There's leagues. And like you said, Wendy, when it came to looking up, the rules of the game, as it were, when I was looking up rules, it was, my search would lead me to different schools because they have dodgeball, they have intramural teams, right? And they have, and I actually had an athlete of mine who I worked with for softball, and one of the training sessions, she pops on me and she says, "Hey, I'm playing in this dodgeball league." I'm like, "What? They have those?" And this I had no idea, right? So it's funny when we were picking this topic, it's like, oh, okay. But when she's telling me about her conditioning and what she has to do, she did it for those points that you bring up, Wendy. She's still actively playing softball for her national team, but she did it for conditioning, and she did it from a vantage point of, she's able to throw, she has to stop, she has to change direction. So all those skill sets and all those things that you need to be just generally overall athletic, that's why she joined the league, was because of that. And it was fun. And for her, it was mostly, she would play the game, have fun, have a few laughs, get pegged every once in a while, and then go out for beers after. That's what they would do. But yeah, that's, for all those points, you just got to be an overall good athlete if you're going to be a good athlete at one sport.
Absolutely. And did you know that the International Dodgeball Day was April 27th? So you know what? That's what everyone needs to do on April 27th. Grab a ball, grab a team, and that go out and play a game of dodgeball. And, I think everyone would have such a fantastic time. It would bring you back to your childhood memories. And, I have a 4-year-old and we're trying to get him to learn how to catch right now and learn how to throw. So, you have to do that in dodgeball. Unfortunately, we're playing dodgeball because he doesn't really know how to catch yet. So he just kind of dives and ducks. And
Don't peg him. Don't peg him too hard, Wendy. Don't.
Well. Yeah, but when we think about teams, I was looking to see there's approximately 6 to 10 players on a team. And, you're going to have, 6 players are going to compete on one side and the other team is going to have that as well. And you can have up to 4 substitutes. And, and as we said, when you're actually playing, there's a certain line you cannot cross. And if you watch the movie, you're going to see at one point, White Goodman, who is the big Globo Gym guru.
Now you're really giving it away, Wendy.
I know, but he crosses the line, and at that point, you can't do that. And so, you got to really know the rules. But and we've kind of mentioned it, but the whole purpose is basically, I'm trying. Let's say if Ken and I were opposing teams, I would be trying to hit Ken somehow, like hit his foot, hit places where it wouldn't be easy for him to catch the ball. If he were to catch my ball, then I would have to go sit down. If he actually catches the ball, I think another person from his team can actually come in as well. So he can save a person from his team if he catches a ball. So it's a win-win for the person that catches. It's a low blow to the other team, obviously. Yeah. And you're trying to win. Is it you have to win two 10 minutes or two rounds?
I've seen, different, depending on the university and depending on the intramural department. It's some, I've seen it's, 40 minutes, quarters, and I've also seen best out of 3 or best out of 5. So it varies, but I'm up for the one where it's like 3 and you're out. That's the quickest way possible.
And of course, for me, I'm like looking it up. Like, are there pro dodgeball players that earn a salary? And the answer to that right now is no. But there is a guy named Jarvis Landry, who's still the best dodgeball player that people have ever seen. And I don't know who the people are, but so we're going to give him some kudos for being the best guy out there, and good for him. But there are amateur leagues out there where you can go, and there are tournaments, like true tournaments, where you can win a big grand prize. This was super fun, Ken. I know we could talk about we could probably just talk about dodgeball for hours. However, we know people have things to do, and
continue working out, guys.
Right. But are there any key takeaways that you want to leave anyone that's still listening to our podcast today?
I feel sorry for you if you're one of those that grew up not playing dodgeball, just because it was, again, it's one of those anchor points for me when it came to growing up at Sundance Elementary School. But it's a great time, and like I said, me now having kids and raising them up, it's one of those things that we're going to play. When you can throw, you can catch, you have to sprint, dodge, dive, duck, dip, dodge, all the 5 Ds. It's something that I'm going to do with my kids. So especially on April 27th.
April 27th is a big dodgeball day. So if you didn't learn anything, maybe at least now you know that. But and I'm going to have to agree. I think dodgeball is really fun. It brings a smile to my face. If you're going to play with little guys and you're teaching them the sport, like don't go out and try to knock their head off. Just teach them the process, have them run around. Make it a fun family day with your kids that you can do for minimal cost. Use a very soft ball, and just have fun with it. But I don't know. At the end of the day, I want to say thank you to my counterpart, Mr. Ken Miller, for joining me today. I want to thank all of you guys for listening. We had such a fun time, and we hope you did as well. And if you liked what you heard today, and you want to visit some of our previous podcasts, or you want to make sure to, tune in for the next ones in the future, please download, subscribe, any place that you listen to podcasts. Just find Random Fit and download us and listen as often as you can. And we want to say until we see you next time, thanks for joining us and be well.